First of all, I want to thanks to New Strategy Center for organizing this forum. And you are welcome to the panel named the US Defense Industry, East Central Europe and Industrial Cooperation, a partnership for a more resilient economy in the region, and how to do smart defense and smart cooperation. I'm really very honored to chair this panel. Please let me introduce myself. I'm a retired Lieutenant General, Cătălin Moraru, with a technical background in the air defense missiles and more than 25 years experience in the military acquisitions. I'm trying now to warm up a little bit you and to introduce in the subject. The entire world is living today a very special period. The pandemic is threatening our health, is changing our lives, and is generating economic crisis. One of the effects was the impact for the defense budgets, and this already happened in a lot of countries. There are expected also significant effects after the last day's events from Afghanistan, and new defense and industrial policies are expected to be changed and developed soon. 3 months ago, in a special decision, the European Union invited the United States, as well as Canada and Norway, to participate in its exclusive defense cooperation mechanism, PESCO. It was for the first time since the program was launched over 3 years ago. This alert highlights important implications for the US defense industry from current trends in the transatlantic defense. With a European Defense Fund budget around 8 billion euro over the 2021-2027 timeframe, the European Union has become an important player in the defense industry, particularly at the research and development phase. These are the first steps because while overall Europe defense spending is around 186 billion euro, only 1.7 billion is allocated to defense research and technology. In comparison with the current US defense budget, request calls are 112 billion only for research, development, test, and evaluation as part of an overall 715 billion package. In addition to the new transatlantic cooperation through PESCO Plus now, there is a long tradition of joint defense efforts within NATO alliance, and in particular, NATO has sought to remain the strongest military alliance in the history by maintaining its technological edge through defense innovation. It has adopted a comprehensive approach on emerging and disruptive technology across several key areas such as space, data, artificial intelligence, autonomy, hypersonic system, new missile technology, quantum technology, and biotechnologies. And all these activities are coordinated extensive inside of the alliance. One of the open questions is whether this new form of transatlantic cooperation in PESCO Plus remains the exception or become the norm. Because like on many other European policies, there are at least many views as there are member states. One perspective often identified with France is that the European Union should seek strategic autonomy in national security and support its own defense industry. Another perspective, sometimes stressed in Germany and other member states, is that European security is inseparable from transatlantic security and can only be achieved through close cooperation between America and Europe, including the defense industries. Some are skeptical of European Union defense efforts altogether, given the existence of NATO and the risk of overlap, duplication, and potential competition between the two institutions. At the time, this reticence is conflated with overall reluctance toward greater defense spending in lieu of other public objectives. Indeed, the current EDF budget was reduced by nearly 40% from the initial amount proposed by European Commission in the light of post-COVID fiscal constraints. Nevertheless, today it's also visible a significant and growing role of the US defense industry in supplying modern military equipment and security know-how to the countries of the East Central Europe region. In the same frame of the pandemic and other political military international development, I believe that it is possible, and this time, of a relocation of the US industrial assets to the safe areas and East Central Europe and could be a very good solution. A smart localization in the actual condition with limited international movement will bring mutual and long terms for US and indigenous industries and also for the military capabilities in the field of maintenance, upgrade, and resilience. Today, we'll have the chance to listen to important speakers with huge experience in the area of defense industry, but also in the military area. Please allow me to introduce the speaker. First of all, I want to make an announcement. It was foreseen Mrs. Daniela Nicolescu to be here together with us, but due to a family event, he could not be with us. The first one is Mr. Denis Gerge, Vice President for Central and Eastern Europe at Lockheed Martin International. He has a long leadership and management experience, global policy, political and governmental relations. You're right. I make a mistake. It was a change. Mr. Daniel Bedoya is close to me, but I follow the papers instead. So, Daniel, I know your position, your old position, but I don't know your new position. So, please present yourself.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Thank you very much. Really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you this afternoon. I'm honored to be here, and this is exciting for me personally, as I am actually relocating to Romania just a few days ago. So my previous role, as the General mentioned, was our business development lead for Sikorsky, but I've now transitioned to a new position here with Lockheed Martin Rotary and Mission Systems, where I'm going to be covering a larger portfolio for Lockheed Martin. I'll be based here in Bucharest and working full-time in Romania. So I look forward to working with you much more here in the near future. I was happy to see resilience as the overall theme for this conference. I think that's a really important topic, whether it's your personal life, whether it's business, or national security. Really for any matters, it's very important to be resilient. We're here to talk about partnering for a more resilient economy in the context of regional threats and challenges and the ability to adapt and recover from difficult situations. With new and emerging threats, including an ongoing global pandemic, I believe cooperation between US and European industry is really critical now more than ever to make sure that we can support a resilient economy in this region in the future. To discuss resilience, we first need to consider potential risks and threats. The threats in the region have been discussed in depth by the many distinguished speakers at this conference, and I've really enjoyed and had the pleasure of listening to that yesterday and this morning, and really getting to hear a lot of different perspectives on the various threats in this region. These include military threats, such as terrorism, hybrid warfare, cyber attacks, and also civil threats, such as natural disasters, emergency situations, and pandemics. The countries in the Black Sea and Balkans region are facing similar threats, and the resources to respond to them are also similar. In short, the same resources are needed to respond to the same threats. This makes interoperability and interchangeability really the keys to resilience. If multiple countries have interoperable equipment and share similar concepts of operations, they can cooperate to counter these threats. In addition, common support elements such as logistics, spare parts, and training will enable higher responsiveness. This has become really critical during the pandemic. Countries must possess the capability and skills and have the necessary tools and parts to support their own equipment, and must also be able to share with allies in the region in order to be successful. The US defense industry really must cooperate with European industry in order to make this happen. Another important source of resilience is dual-use equipment, which provides flexibility. Easy reconfiguration of military equipment is key to enable equipment that can be used to respond to both military and civil threats. This allows for more efficient spending by providing more operational value for invested funds, and is really critical as defense funds are continuing to be challenged. An example of dual-use equipment is military vehicles and aircraft that have been used to transport people and supplies for humanitarian needs during the pandemic, which is really a great example of resilience during a difficult situation. The ability to reconfigure equipment to respond to multiple military threats or multiple threats provides flexibility and responsiveness for increased resilience. This is really where industry comes into play. Industry partnerships across multiple countries in the region are critical to supply common infrastructure, equipment, and support. Our role as industry is to provide the best solutions to our customers to support the warfighters, first responders, and all of those who are fighting against the threats that have been mentioned previously. Continued cooperation and partnerships between the US defense industry and companies in Europe are critical to remain resilient to counter those threats. As the Lockheed Martin participant on this panel, I have to mention that Lockheed Martin has been doing business in Europe for over 80 years, and this is really a point of pride for our company as we've successfully worked with local industry to meet our commitments, and we continue to seek out new partnerships and cooperation in Europe. We really understand the importance of industry partnerships to develop the best solutions for our customers. An example of that, I'd like to highlight our business in Poland, the PZL Mielec business, where we produce Black Hawk cabins for the US Army, build Black Hawk aircraft for international and commercial customers, and manufacture M28 fixed-wing aircraft. The company employs over 1,500 employees in Poland. It's one of Poland's top defense exporters, and it does business with more than 1,300 Polish businesses in their supply chain. We also understand the importance of diversification of supply for resilience. The existence of multiple suppliers and capabilities, especially when it comes to logistics, is important to support the economic ecosystem. This is another aspect of resilience that has become even more necessary in a COVID reality today. In my new role here in Bucharest, one of my priorities is going to be working with Romanian industry, especially to establish capabilities to support Black Hawk helicopters, which I've been previously working in my role at Sikorsky. We actually recently last year signed a memorandum of understanding with Romaero to work together to establish a Black Hawk Regional Service Center here in Romania, and I look forward to continuing this cooperation and expanding our industrial partnerships in Romania and the region. When I think about resilience, I also need to talk a little bit more about the Black Hawk helicopter itself. It's a true dual-use aircraft that was built to military standards and was meant to handle difficult combat situations and challenging environments. This is why it's proven itself as the primary medium-lift multi-role helicopter for the US Army. It was also designed for flexibility and can be reconfigured for civil missions such as firefighting, humanitarian support, and search and rescue. It's encouraging to see more European countries acquiring the Black Hawk. They're currently operated by Austria, Poland, Slovakia, and Sweden. And in the past year, other countries have placed orders such as Albania, Croatia, Latvia, and Lithuania. To further highlight the civil capabilities of the aircraft, the state of California operates Black Hawks that were built in Poland for firefighting missions as the Firehawk, where they can drop over 3,700 liters of water in a single drop in order to stop fires from spreading out of control. This is only possible thanks to the lift capabilities of a military helicopter. The Black Hawk is extremely resilient and supports all the attributes I spoke about earlier: interoperability, interchangeability, and dual use. With the aircraft built in Poland, operated by multiple countries in Europe, and sustained here in Romania, it really supports resilience in Central and Eastern Europe and those industrial partnerships that I mentioned. So to summarize, I really do believe that industrial partnerships are key to support those key attributes of interoperability, interchangeability, flexibility, and diversification, which will enable resilience in the Black Sea and Balkans region. And Lockheed Martin, along with our other peers from the American defense industry, look forward to continuing to cooperate with industry here in Romania and within the region in order to support a more resilient economy in Central and Eastern Europe in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Daniel. Sorry for
No problem.
mistake, thank you. Mr. Bedoya present us an interesting vision from the Lockheed Martin point of view about the very complex subject of resilience and how to obtain, to realize this. And also he presented the solutions offered by Lockheed Martin in some countries from East and Central Europe. Thank you very much, Daniela. The next speaker is Mr. Silviu Grecu, General Manager at Romaero, an expert in the aerospace and defense industry with extensive experience in the management role. Mr. Grecu, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I am honored to be here today to discuss and present some of the future opportunities that Romaero has and the Romanian defense industry. As I am joined by one of the two of our biggest partners within the defense industry, Lockheed Martin and Boeing. Further on my discussion today, I will present our ideas and how we plan to implement these programs within the national industry, especially within our company. Before I elaborate on this, I would like to take a moment to present a little bit of information about Romaero. Romaero is one of the flagships in Romanian industry for defense and aerospace. It currently runs on 3 business lines. We have the civil MRO, where we maintain fleets of Boeing 737s. So even in this business line, we have a long-lasting relationship with Boeing aircrafts and also Airbus A320s. And we are also looking at expanding that business line. Another business line that we have is manufacturing, where we manufacture primary parts up to major assemblies. One of our biggest advantages is that we can be seen as a full integrator, sort of all-inclusive supplier, as we can start from bare metal, go through all of the processes that we have in-house, and up to major assemblies. We are also developing, at the moment, we have one of the biggest composite facilities in Europe, and we are also keen on developing that side of the business also. Circling back to the theme today, one of our most important business line is the military MRO, where we, with our partner, the Ministry of Defense, we are doing maintenance programs for the fleet of C-30s, C-130s, and Antonov aircrafts that the Romanian Air Forces are operating for military transport. And we are now in discussions to start developing the maintenance for the C-27J Spartan, also with our long-lasting partners. Of course, as I know, our partners are aware of Romaero, such as other companies within the national industry, have not always proved an agility in working around and entering this type of programs in development. And now we are turning this around. We are looking at all of the opportunities. Just now I was having a discussion, we just met with Oshkosh about trying to see what we can develop also. We are looking at setting up the best practices. We are looking at setting intelligent way of doing business and how to acquire and be in front of all of the programs that are developing and they might be developing further. Fortunately, we are now at a point where within all of these programs where Romania is looking at purchasing military equipment, military platforms to arm its armed forces and to upgrade it. It is a unique opportunity for us as an industry. We can revive, using properly this type of programs, we can revive an important branch of the national industry. When I say this, it comes to mind, obviously, the offset opportunities and the industrial collaboration programs. Even though if we are looking at offset opportunities, They might not be always the most, the best proven mechanism when we are looking at G2G sales, as also the collaboration, the industrial collaboration cannot be excluded when we are talking about also G2G sales. In direct commercial sales, the offset mechanism is well known. In G2G, we could put more emphasizing on industrial collaboration. What we can expect and what we are looking at when we are talking about this type of collaborations, when we are talking about offset and industrial collaborations with the biggest names in defense industries within the world, we need to look at our national industry and look at the capabilities that we have and the capabilities that we want to develop further. That means that we should not focus all the time on what we can do within said programs, within each program specifically. We can look as companies within the Romanian defense industry at what we can develop with the largest manufacturer of military equipment within their supply chain. So even though we may not have a capability ready to sustain an ongoing program, we can provide assistance, and we can be a valuable asset within other programs and within other aspects of the global supply chain of such type of companies. What we're focusing now on the developing programs with our partners from Lockheed Martin, like Dan already mentioned, we are looking at setting up a regional center for maintenance for the Black Hawks. We are counting and we are thankful for the support that we are getting from our partners within the Ministry of Defense and the Ministry of Internal Affairs, and we are doing everything that we can to provide sustainability. From an economical point of view, from a business point of view, I will tell you what it makes sense for us or for the Romanian industry to look at sustainability more than direct offset on any given one point. The lifespan, I will talk, for example, about the Black Hawk platform. The lifespan of such a platform is between 25, 30, 40 years, and so on. As in within any type of product that has such a lifespan, the economics are as follows. Around 30% out of the total cost of ownership and operating, 30% roughly is the initial acquisition price, and about 70% of the total costs it's operating and maintaining. That's why we are targeting as a business this type of opportunity to maintain, to sustain, to be part of the long life cycle, to be able to provide for the MOD and for the MOI the services that they need at the base level maintenance, and support nationwide. Also, the Romanian companies can work together, and within an horizontal integration, they can provide more than any one given entity can provide. Also, with our partners from Boeing, which I am proud to say that we have a 30 years ongoing relationship, within our manufacturing divisions, we are producing parts for Boeing, for every type of Boeing model that is out there. Every one of them is flying with Romaero parts. We are looking at the same business model for the AH-64 program, and I will tell you just like a wish of mine. I've always seen the two platforms acting together. So we are really glad as Romaero we are able to partner up with the two major companies and make this come true. In conclusion, we are ready to assume the role of integrator, role of important partner for companies that are trying to develop here in Romania this type of relationship, and for the armed forces that need a commercial entity in order to provide support and everything else they need in order to operate. Because here I would like to finish in this note: sustainability is the key. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Grecu. From your presentation, we could find some capabilities of company Romaero, and you stressed several times your, let's say, the openness of Romaero to be involved in any industrial cooperation program. Fortunately, the flying objects are very complex, and normally it's involving a lot of other industry in order to realize and to maintain aircrafts, helicopters. To realize the regional centers for maintenance for Black Hawk, it's a very good example of how to perform the industrial cooperation between United States and East European countries. Thank you very much for your presentation. The next speaker is Mr. Adam Hodges, Capture Team Lead, Vertical Lift International Sales, Boeing Defense, Space and Security, a veteran of the Middle East operation with a successful 20 years career as an US Army officer. Mr. Hodges, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, sir. Thank you for that kind introduction. And first, let me say what an honor it is to speak today. And let me say a thank you to the New Strategy Center and the production crew that has put on such a great show today. My audio good? Okay. All right, I'm getting waved at from the back there. So I'll tell you, it's an honor to be here. And again, I was here last year. It was the first event live since the onset of the pandemic, and it was a phenomenal experience. And I'm feeling the same energy here this year. Show of hands, who all was here last year? Anybody out there that was here last year? A couple folks? Yeah? All right. Don't be shy. All right. So for the folks that didn't raise your hand, and for the folks that did, please turn around when this is over. Take advantage of the opportunity to go meet somebody new. The opportunity to network here, and in this strange world we live, with the pandemic, with masks and virtual work, and it's such a great opportunity and honor. Capitalize on the chance to meet someone new, introduce yourself, make a new connection. As we talk partnerships here, so important to make those personal connections. So like you mentioned in your introduction, yes, I'm a former Army officer. I retired from the Army about 1.5 years ago. I spent a lifetime of my professional life flying the Apache helicopter as an aviator in the U.S. Army. Retired as a colonel, and then went to work for Boeing, working on the Apache program. And so much of what I'll talk about today will be in the lens of that as we talk about resilience and industrial cooperation. It's a great topic to talk about. And so, understand that's near and dear to my heart, and it will help inform the conversation. So, as we talk about the defense industry, we have such great representation up here from our Romanian partners against some tremendous American companies, the two biggest defense contractors in the world with Boeing and Lockheed, as we compete with many things, but we're also partners on many things. And one thing that I'd like to note is that Boeing has a reputation with its commercial aircraft as a manufacturer of airplanes. That's what many people think of for Boeing, but it's so much more than that. We obviously have a robust defense side, but I would better term us as an aerospace and technology company. And that's key to think about as we move forward. And I will say that many of the points I want to make, gentlemen, I think you stole my notes. Good job on covering down on those. But and I will say that as we talk this topic here, as representatives of the defense industry, as we talk about industrial cooperation, it's the reality is this is a tough subject. And none of us up here have a magic wand in our pocket that can answer the solution to how do we have smart industrial cooperation and how do we build resilience. But forums like this are a great way to share ideas and move forward. So one of the things I want to do is define some of the terms that are in the title of our topic. As we talk about industrial cooperation, partnership, resilience, and economy, those we're all speaking English here, and people understand the words, but sometimes the definitions might be, different for people. And so, I want to define industrial cooperation. You may hear the term international strategic partnerships. You may hear industrial participation. You may hear offset. Those are all terms that are generally equal to each other and a little nuanced. But bottom line, it's an investment by the manufacturer of the equipment in the FMS customer's economy. And so that's the concept we're talking here. And when we talk partnerships, you could Google the word partnership and you would get an answer like I did yesterday, where it said two parties that are engaged in the same activity. But I think in this environment here, we're talking about something deeper, something longer lasting, a mutually supportive and beneficial relationship over time. I would make it almost akin to a marriage. That's the type of level of commitment we're talking about here. And then resilience, a word that been used so many times so far in the event, rightfully so. And so whether you're talking resilience for an individual or you're talking resilience for an entire country, an entire economy, there's different definitions you could use, such as the ability to recover from adversity, a toughness of spirit, the elasticity to bend but not break when faced with stress. But how do you really define resilience when you talk about a country of 30 million people, in the economy and all the things that go with that? And speaking of economy, how do you define economy, right? And it's the many words could be used, but the processes associated with an ecosystem of production and trade of goods in a society. And there's even in the United States, with the scale, the world's largest economy and the world's largest defense budget, the defense budget is just a very small amount of the overall economy. So while a huge contributor, it doesn't drive the economy. And so with those terms defined, I just want to talk three key points. And again, I'm an Apache pilot, if I didn't mention that already. And four tours in the Middle East with that aircraft. I know what it can do. I know where it's going. And so I'm going to use that as a lens to talk 3 points. And first off, to say that for any partnership to work, I want to say that the partnership must be mutually beneficial. All right, and we sometimes in America we use the term a win-win relationship, where both parties gain from the relationship. All right, and an acquisition of a program like the Apache or the Black Hawk, it's not a simple transaction. And you mentioned how only 30% of a cost of a system is the acquisition, or the remainder is sustainment and improvement over a lifetime. All right, and so that we're talking about a generational partnership, not just a single transaction. All right, and the U.S. Army and Boeing, for example, are going to be in a relationship with the Apache helicopter for generations to come. I mean, it will probably outlive me. I'm 45 years old. The Army plans to fly it until 2060 or beyond. There's no plans to replace it. There's 17 partnered nations right now and growing that fly the helicopter. That's a generational engagement and partnership. All right. And finally, speaking of partnerships, I'd be remiss, Dan, you mentioned the Apache and Black Hawk often work together. We call that the U.S. Army model. And as nations look to modernize their militaries, we strongly encourage that cooperation for interoperability reasons, for the technology and the techniques and procedures the U.S. Army uses. That is the model we strongly encourage. But with any partnerships, any long-lasting partnerships, there's always going to be hard times, right? And so a long-lasting partnership is an inherently resilient relationship. But when you're talking about, the resiliency at scale, at an economy scale, one thing that it's very important, and again, Dan, you mentioned, is diversity, all right, and the ability to diversify an economy to minimize its risks and the impact of, whether it's a pandemic shock or an economic downturn, but that diversity within an economy is key, all right? And so, I would say that, in an economy where you're trying to, minimize risk and maximize the elements of your economy. You have the old economy, which is labor-based production, and what you might call the new economy, which would be a knowledge-based technology. All right, and they're both important. The old economy is hard to scale for a small country like Romania or many of our partners. All right, but the new economy, which is tech-based, can be explosive growth, and Romania could easily be a world-class player in that arena. And a company like Boeing would absolutely be a great partner to have a long-term relationship to help both of those elements of the Romanian economy. And the final point, and maybe this should have been the first point, but the bottom line is, for an economy to be resilient, it must survive and have its most basic needs met, which is to be safe. All right, and so as we talk defense, clearly we're all defense contractors. And as we talk about our impact on the economy, we provide the arsenal of freedom. We provide the tools that allow for an economy to be safe. We've heard Mr. Ullman, Harlan Ullman, talk about his porcupine theory during this event. And, you want to be, porcupine is not necessarily, it's not a tiger or a lion, but nobody messes with a porcupine, right? So again, as an Apache pilot, I'd say there's no badder porcupine on the battlefield than the Apache. But I would say with a closing thought here, the last thing I'd leave you with is, the idea that we opened this forum with a very powerful discussion about the importance of education, and all the sorts of things that we're dealing with in our, with this pandemic, and where we need our countries to go with education. In today's youth, raised on the internet, they're used to instantaneous feedback. They've grown up in social networking. But what I found is they're looking for a space with freedom to create. All right, and Romania has so much talent and potential in this area. I'd offer, don't let rules and regulations stifle that creativity. Provide today's youth an opportunity and environment where they can grow and put this creativity into action. You can look at an example like America's Silicon Valley, where some of the biggest companies in the world were founded. They were founded in garages by young people with the opportunity and the environment that was allowed them to create. So I'd leave that with the final comment. So. It was great to speak to you all today. I appreciate your time, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hodges. I really appreciate your speech and the vision that you offer us how to obtain resilience for a country. And what we understood is that a long-term partnership is bringing for sure mutual benefits for countries and for companies. Thank you very much. The next speaker is Mr. Paul Strebel, Senior Director of International Business for Oshkosh Defense. Mr. Strebel has a long experience of international business and supporting militaries around the world. Mr. Strebel, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you very much. Am I on? Can you hear me? Okay. On, are we good? Okay. It's a pleasure to be here. It's my first Black Sea Defense Security Forum. I'm learning a lot, meeting a lot of great people, so I'm grateful for this opportunity. I do have a couple visuals. I won't even call it a presentation because I hear there's a prize if you have a presentation with the fewest amount of words, so I'm in pursuit of that prize. So just a few words about Oshkosh and more about idea sharing about where we want to go within Romania, in particular with industrial cooperation. This is one of my favorite pictures. This is in the Bogota Range in May of this year. Over my years, I've had a chance to go to a lot of different parts of Romania, all very beautiful. Special Forces accepted our offer to stop over on our way to Defender 21 in North Macedonia. So we engaged in what typically with our platform becomes a favorite game and pastime of potentially new customers. And let's try to get the Oshkosh JLTV stuck or broken. But happy to report that per usual, neither of those things happened. We had a great day on the challenging terrain. Oh, I'm in charge of my slides. All right. It's a portfolio snapshot, and I just want you to be aware because a lot of people are, of course, familiar with Lockheed and Boeing, but not everybody knows what Oshkosh is and what we're part of. So we're the only tactical wheeled vehicle manufacturer in the United States that are building light, medium, and heavy military vehicles at the same time on a mixed model manufacturing line for both the U.S. government and for international customers all over the world. So this volume has amassed to over 160,000 military trucks produced so far. You'll recognize these trucks because it's not just U.S. but our allied troops that are operating these platforms both through enduring and rotational presence in Europe. And I have to say that Romania is the first of those allied partners who will be operating in these families of light, medium, and heavy through Patriot, HIMARS, and now Special Forces JLTV. So speaking of JLTV, it's the next generation of light 4x4 vehicles with an enhanced mission profile capability and an ability to integrate lethality and then move that lethality into position very quickly. I think that's going to be a strong element of deterrence for a lot of the future and existing operators. We're humbled to be under contract for 18,000 of these vehicles. And due to its modular design, there's a number of different modifications and add-on systems that require localized content and regional partners. To depict that, all 4 of these pictures, these are non-US manufactured systems, and none of them are being used by US Army right now. Oshkosh works with the European manufacturers to install, test, qualify these systems on our platforms to then sell them as integrated systems through local support partners in the region. We've spent considerable time over the last several years working with a number of existing and potential partners in Romania. That's the entire family of Romarm companies, Stimpex, Interactive, ProOptica, Elbit, and soon Silviu, according to our conversation. So we've identified localized content projects that align to existing industrial capability and also with what the Ministry of Defense needs as part of their end user requirements. We're actively doing this across the region, and I think our approach is to almost use Cătălin's words and do smart localization, where one of the localized projects that we do for Romania will not replicate what we're trying to do in Poland, so that Romania will do it for their military, but also export it to the other existing and future operators in the region. This way, you've got a piece of your own, but you also have a piece of the wider, larger network of operators in Europe. In fact, we've already designed a new enhanced capability for the JLTV originating from our time here in Romania this spring. This is the Shepherd version of the JLTV. It's, yes, non-lethal though. So joking aside, we've signed an MOU over a year ago with Romarm. This is the framework agreement to cooperate and partner wherever possible within that network of companies. It's part of our existing business model, like many of my U.S. industry partners here, to leverage existing local companies, not roll in with greenfield and create something that certainly exists in one form or another. There's one program that we're particularly proud of, and that has to do with an NSPA tender that was initiated earlier in the year. And it's a framework agreement for 112 vehicle platforms that are used by the U.S. and its allied partners. And this framework allows local sustainment partners to qualify under this framework, so that when any of them are operating and rotating through region, that they call up one of those providers to perform scheduled, unscheduled maintenance or repair. So we've reached out in advance of this and have Romarm as one of these qualified parties, along with partners in Poland, Czech Republic, Lithuania. So you can see not just Romania's forces, but the U.S. rotational forces that will leverage us. So this is a great experience for Romania to actually have intimate knowledge of the platforms before their full fleets are up in service and operational. It's generating business for a Romanian prime. I'm just a sub, right? They call me when they need a part. They call me when they need some additional training. So I think it's a good news story. One of the other ideas that I wanted to share is that we have a relationship with Comrades, the Romanian Army charity, and one of our focal efforts in the U.S., and I think sometimes we take it for granted, is the focus of hiring veterans. Oshkosh alone has over 700 veterans working within our organization. Our human resource executives have even done workshops and have gone to Lithuania on trying to teach best practices on how to bring military veterans into the workplace, not just in the manufacturing environment, but of course in professional roles as well. Oh, there we go. We expect Romania to be a regional leader from an operational standpoint of JLTV for its special forces and perhaps land forces, we'll have to see. But there'll also be a major provider of service and training, modifications and upgrades to themselves and its regional partners. I want to leverage a term I heard yesterday from Major General Bedoya, constellation of capability, and that just stuck in my mind after he had mentioned that. So this capability applies to the JLTV platform and its interoperability among the multiple user nations, added with its enhanced system capabilities, but also expands to the network of regional industry partners that can support any of these nations wherever deployed and operating, bringing them long-term and sustainable business. It's my opinion that JLTV will assist NATO members to ensure that it maintains the full range of capabilities necessary to deter and defend against any threat, while at the same time keep its defense industry and military maintainers connected with complementary capabilities to include these localized production projects that I exemplified, and also sustainment, integration, and upgrades through that overall total life support, which, as my colleagues pointed out earlier, sustainment is a big piece of the total life cycle commitment to a platform. So that concludes my remarks. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Strebel. I really appreciate in your presentation the Oshkosh capabilities and the real steps done to cooperate with Romanian industry foreseen in the Memorandum of Understanding with Romaero. And what is very important is the big potential offered by enrollment and together for NSPA. I want to have a comment about the GLTV Choban version. You should pay attention for this, not only you, and also the other, because the shipmen in the history, they were able only to walk, or maybe to use for transportation some monkeys. But nowadays they are using very performant 4x4 cars and also helicopters to survey the ships. So maybe the civilian market, it's important.
Dual use, right? Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much one more time. We have now a session for question and answers, and I invite you to address questions to the speakers. If you don't have yet, I have a question. First of all, it's for Mr. Strebel, for Oshkosh, but on another hand, it could be for all of you. GLTV, it's sold in a large quantities today through Europe. And my question is, how is Oshkosh approach partner nation industry participation, because this is not obviously necessary required in a G2G program. And how are you doing this? Because it's not mandatory, but Oshkosh is still doing this.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Am I still on? Okay, good. I mean, part of it is what the company believes in, and I know my American company colleagues are the same, is to do the right thing. And there's a baseline of capability that we, that we have a duty to move forward, so that there's an indigenous capability either within the military or through industry. So establishing that service provider network, training, especially on the motorized vehicle platforms, being able to source as much as they can locally for the consumable and ongoing use, and then moving into some of these enhanced integration projects. Anybody who's been familiar with the foreign military sales process, once you finally get through the paper process and how things actually appear and come together and get to the user is a completely different process. So especially with smaller user nations who've actually, this is their first FMS platform. It's been used to replace aged Soviet equipment, is to try to work as a good partner to help them bring all those pieces together. From a sourcing perspective of trying to give every country some piece of their supply chain involved, we all know that's a difficult process with U.S. defense platforms. I think ours is compounded even a bit more because, believe it or not, I can't verify the facts, but I think it's one of the first times in history that an allied partner received a platform before U.S. Army Europe did in Europe. So Montenegro received their shipment of JLTVs before they rolled into Germany for U.S. Army. Normally it's 10 to 12 years before anything like that takes place. So because of that, the current design of the platform, trying to extrapolate any part of that into a localized non-U.S. manufacturing process is ridden with challenge. But on the other hand, we're delivering capability to allies that is completely in line and common with the U.S. So I think the other thing that you mentioned dual use from my colleagues, and they have other business segments just as we do. So we also try to introduce the non-defense segments of our supply chain and requirements to find opportunities and connections where we can. And once in a while, we find a great win. If you're a backup camera out of Europe, and now you're going to be on 65,000 vehicles, that's a big win, and we continue to search for those types of opportunities where we can.
Okay, thank you very much.
I'd like to add.
Please, Mr. Hodges.
All right, so great response, Paul. And I would I'd like to add that when I talked about a win-win relationship and how the partnership has to be mutually beneficial. We look at for example, again, I'll speak in terms of the Apache. We know that local industry oftentimes has the best perspective on how to sustain the aircraft and the unique needs of that customer. As we have, like I said, 17 partner nations, and some of them are among the largest militaries in the world, but some of them are not. We have some customers that are fairly small markets, and they have those smaller countries have the best perspective of the unique challenges of the smaller militaries. And some of the partnerships that that we would see for a program like that are not directly related to either the acquisition or the sustainment of the aircraft, but might be things such as technology transfer or education. Part of industrial participation, cooperation with many of our Asian Pacific customers in particular. They really value the education opportunities, training their engineers, training their business elements to learn how to do business with large companies like Boeing. They value that as part of the partnership, very much so, and that's something that we often do outside of the aircraft sustainment role.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hodges. Please.
Told I had to come over here. Hi, Greg Melcher, New Generation Warfare Center. In the last panel, there was discussions about the European defense funds and a lot of R&D that would go into defense development. And my initial reaction was that would create some competitors to the three companies that are on here. But I wonder if the U.S. companies are thinking about this and how they maybe could leverage that in the future in some positive way. And maybe if they've thought of that, if they could give some comments on how that might be more synergistic with what is currently going on.
I can talk to that one, a little bit about what Lockheed Martin has been doing. A lot of that goes back to partnerships again. So, I talked a little bit about PZL Mielec, which we have in Poland, building the Blackhawks. In cases where there would be, European funding, PZL can actually sell directly to customers if they're doing a direct commercial sale versus doing an FMS. So in that way, we can take advantage of European funds or different sorts of funding from different customers that may be outside of what we would typically do. So a lot of times we'll look at, partnering with international companies or, using some of our international subsidiaries in order to be able to take advantage of those different funding sources, because that is something that we've looked at. It can be a challenge for a U.S. company, especially competing in Europe with some of the European primes, and that's one way that we've found that we still can be competitive if it's a European Defense Fund or some sort of EU funding or something like that. We have to really work closely with the European industry in order to be able to do that.
Thank you very much. I have another question, if you allow me. In the vision of the companies that you represent, how do you believe that United States companies will try to solve the problem of the, let's say, I could give you an example about the shortage of the chipsets. Do you believe that the United States will try to build these capabilities in the United States territory or to relocate in other places of the world more safely in comparison with the Asian one? So it's relocation, or United States is trying to bring home these industrial facilities?
Well, I think it's probably a little bit of both. I mean, the pandemic has really shown some weaknesses in the globalized supply chain. That the globalization happened for a reason. It's a very efficient system. The technology of mass communication and mass transport, has allowed us to manufacture things in bulk in one location and move them to the other, at scale and efficiently. But when the world's labor force goes into lockdown, that entire system gets thrown into whack. And then I think that there will definitely be a strong look by the world's leading economies on where have we identified the greatest risk. There are certain things that that cannot have shortages, or at least are far more are far greater at risk of impacting, having second and third order effects of the economy if they're short. So yeah, I think we'll start to see some rebalancing. We never want to have a single supplier of anything in our supply chain. We always have backups. We always have a second source and sometimes a third source for that very reason. And so we're starting to see at the global scale, you mentioned the chip set shortage, impacting things like automobiles and iPhones and, small handheld appliances, like hair dryers, things that you never would have thought would have been impacted. So obviously you have, national defense systems which are, at risk, but you also have, the greater economy at risk. So we'll definitely see a move toward diversity to mitigate that risk in the future.
Yeah, because it's not a problem of technology. United States has this technology. It's a problem of price, maybe, increase of the pricing in the future. But it's more safely. If there are any other questions, if not, I want to thank you very much to the speakers, and I'll decide to close this panel 5 minutes earlier. Thank you very much.